Anyway, so that's what I'm in charge of, the program manager, I'm part of that. But then on the other side, I'm the only one in the county that emergency management officer. So anyway, then it's working both places. Oh,
and I help them with the update of the head education plan.
Oh, well, then you're familiar
So we
then
get
with.
information from like the emergency management director, and the private. And some people are like have different roles.
Right.
Right. Part-time firefighter, part-time EMT,
Right, right, exactly.
They're all volunteers.
Yeah, for the fire side, for sure, most of them, there's a lot of volunteer firefighters, especially in your cities and things like that, and bigger metro areas.
I think
Paid staff at church, and things like that. Most of it's volunteer, and that's what FRCI does. So when Erin was here this morning, she does training to address those issues, different things that she's working on, whatever the curriculum is that needs to be either developed or revised to address certain things, or maybe like she's worked on autism, program or course so that firefighters understand. Right, something like that. She does a lot of different things.
Because every time I go to the
right, yeah, so
do you remember the big bucket
I'm the state specialist over the program that is run in the local community. Right. Go through training, develop things, fun, that sort of thing, but, and then as part of my job, I also work very, closely with the
something else.
So I work with a lot of the volunteer organizations, Cross-Country, so anyway, I'm trying to bring that flavor of what's going on up here. I'm not trying to do it between what's going on up here and what's going on down here. Right. Anyway, that's why I know more about this. Oh, wow, you have some food. Lord. Oh, yeah, same here. Glad you went to that. But you were part of that planning commission internship because it really gives you a foot up. Now, what's your degree? What did you do?
I just finished my master's degree in chemical public affairs. I used to be a master's degree of defense, and now I'm part of care. So that
Oh, okay.
Maybe tell us about your brain for extra examples. If you have any ideas of research add to the medical defense.
Yeah. Good. Okay, well, good. I was gonna say, I don't know if we have anything to offer today, but listening to what you guys have to offer, that's free for me. To learn that. So. Oh yeah, very good. Well, you ended up in a good place, haven't you? Nice. All right. I will.
There's fruit on the white stuff.
I'm telling you, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. We got Friday, when we get this open.
They're so hungry this morning, and now I'm ready for. Very satisfying.
You'll probably notice that, like the other people in care, probably just be hovering around us, like, you'll just see like cruising by the office every so often.
Remind me of my graduate, my first graduate program. We are architecture and urban planning department. The architectural students are like spend all of their day and night in the basement, building the models, So every time we have this refreshment, leftovers, we bring the leftovers into the basement.
Oh.
Because they said they are study students out there.
Of course.
Right, yeah. And because they even sleep there, in the morning you have people wearing their pajamas and brushing their teeth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and try to find food from the vending machine and they throw coin and just come out and eat it. So the vending machine get broken in. Oh my gosh, yeah. Some kind of other things. Yeah. I'm kind of picky about what I eat now instead of free pizza. Yeah, really. I wonder how long this is going to sit here. Yeah.
Come on in.
Hey,
You
come on.
sure?
Yeah. Clear room, seat aside here.
Be careful of my cord. I know.
Okay.
Can you make it? Limbo,
You're on.
the
How you holding
question. Good. Thanks.
Wow, you got layers everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Angela.
Angela, take me.
Very nice to meet you. You shake my hand. Melissa, nice to meet you.
Michael?
Michael, yeah.
How you doing? Yeah.
Go back away.
Yeah, we actually talked over, the hot dog guy just a week ago, yeah.
Oh, you know that pretty good. Pretty good.
I think it's called Two Hot Dogs.
Two odd dogs.
Yeah. But I thought it was old,
Yeah, they're fun.
I thought it was old dogs, but it's not.
Oh.
I was lucky, I was concerned, because I'm like, I'm either gonna be really full or get.
Either one doesn't sound too hot.
Hi.
Luckily, it was, it just felt
Come on
weird.
in.
Thanks.
Oh, you're here too, and she's coming out of the restroom.
If you guys can believe it, this guy suffered through me and Aloy in grad school together.
Oh,
Mhm.
no.
Yeah. Both of us.
At the same time?
Yeah.
I had these two working on the same.
That's right, yep. It was through the, were you on that one too?
She was.
What's that?
City project?
Oh, yeah. What did you do for that?
I went to a few meetings.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
The city couldn't get their act together.
No, they couldn't.
I went to council meetings. It was nice, I got a little civic involvement there.
There was one meeting that was kind of rough. They were really hard. You might not have had it.
Probably not.
By that time, already.
Yeah.
I've gotten out of it, right?
They could figure out what
They still can't.
Yeah, I compare it with the one that us did.
Amazing story all the time with them.
Hello.
Hi. Come on in.
Cheers.
We have the chairs over here, but they do have cords involved in them.
Yeah,
so
be
just
careful.
There's another chair over here.
And there are some.
Yeah, please help yourself.
Oh,
We've got cookies,
Sorry.
fruit, coffee, tea, water.
Just stay away. Good, man, how are you? Been talking about the spin club a lot. So. Yeah. Have you met Sarah yet? I think we might get
Yes. Oh, Sarah, no. Sarah, she's a.
Sarah, I mentioned finding you this morning.
Oh,
She
hi,
was
Sarah.
very
Nice to meet you. Yeah, hopefully we'll meet again and.
She's our new faculty.
Yeah. I remember you were excited about her.
Yeah.
Because of the way she brought it.
Yes. Together.
Congratulations. Yeah, I'm newcomer to there.
I am, Michael, and with Sarah's all
Okay.
over here. So we're kind of,
Well represented.
yeah, we're holding down this end of the.
We've seen it before.
We can give you some more cord here, if you want to squeeze in.
Sarah, I haven't seen you for a while. I saw
Hey,
you. I'm
how are you,
John
John?
Gilbert.
Good to see you.
We met
Yeah.
in Illinois.
Illinois,
Yeah.
yeah.
I tell stories about you. I don't know if you realize that. I don't know if I,
Yeah, Mark
did you tell this?
keeps forgetting that we met,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, I know.
I can't remember if I told him the story because we were together, Mark and I were together last week.
Okay, yeah, I don't think so.
It's a story about when, so we were talking, I came up and introduced ourselves because we were getting ready to go to
Scotland
Scotland.
Connection, yeah, the Scotland
And I
Connection,
said,
yeah.
it was like talking to two different people. I said, here we're talking, and all of a sudden this Scottish, lady appears, and it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of funny.
that's a game trick you'll have to play.
Yeah.
I bet you play that often. don't
It's a
you?
good trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday, I had lunch with Judy Stallman and, one of the other new faculty in AccuCon. And I introduced myself to the other woman is like, oh, I'm from Iowa. I'm from Iowa. So she was like, but I always think of you as from Scotland. I was like, well, it's context dependent, you know? If it's suitable to be an Iowa farm girl, I'll be honest.
It's nice to be able to kind of change uniforms without ever
Right?
having to do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Pat, how are you?
Yeah. So, well, no, it's actually tomorrow. We had something yesterday too. Yeah, it's going good. Going good.
Hey, Rob. Good, how are you?
Saturday degrees, it might be a little bit pleasant at 98.
Oh, my God, that's unbelievable.
Are you working with Sharon and Richard today, or are you doing
And, it's
Kind of
how
All right. We're a couple
like
minutes
lack of housing?
After 2, we got several people on the phone, so I figure we'll just get started here, if that's all right. It would be good for us, I know we just did a few introductions here, but it'd be great for us to start with introductions. First and foremost, thank you guys all for being here. This is our second impact team of the day, meeting of the day. We're gonna have 2 more tomorrow, so we're just trying to get through them here. But hopefully, we've learned a few things from the morning session. We're gonna make your sessions this afternoon even better. So we do have some folks on the phone, so we'll have you guys introduce yourselves last. But I'll start. So I'm Jamie Kleinsberg. I'm a project coordinator here at CARES, or the Center for Applied Research and Engagement Systems. I'm also the leader of the Business and Community Impact Team. So there are 4 of us here in this room that are part of the Impact Team. And then we have a couple of folks that are doing user experience, and they'll introduce themselves. So we'll go into kind of why we're here and what we're here for here in just a minute, but let's learn who everyone is around the table.
Okay, good morning. I think I know some of you, others are new faces. Steve Hennis, I'm a campus specialist with the 4-H Center for Youth Development, over on the corner there at South College. Came here to Mizzou and went through the Rural Sociology Community Development Program. So kind of, I have some background in this area, but moved into youth development, and these days working a lot on civic engagement, the role of youth in community, more career exploration, career readiness, entrepreneurship, a lot of different stuff that packs in there. And of course, we do continuing education, professional development, the Youth Development Academy. But really interested in the work of this group, and looking forward to learning more, meeting more.
I'm John Gulick. I've been a community development specialist for 40 years. Worked with Extension for 40. I've been paid by Extension for the last 3.5. But it's been, the outside was actually good because I had one project where I saw 6 different specialists working together. So it was really neat to see. I've been a community development specialist for the last 3.5 years. Just recently with reorganization, relocated to Osage County, which is just east of Jefferson City. So I'm a county engagement specialist. And then with one of my 2 or 3 other hats, I'm part of Rob Russell's team with the statewide with the labor and workforce development.
Connie Burnham, state specialist for the emergency management.
Rob Russell, Director of Labor and Workforce Development.
I'm Justine. I'm new to CARES. Work with Lisa to improve usability of platforms.
Hi, Angela Johnson. I've been with CARES about 7-ish years or so now. I'm leading the health and safety impact team. My role at CARES is around data and GIS and mapping.
Parnell. I'm the assistant director at CARES. I've been here since 1992. Worked on a variety of projects, and I'm going to say that All Things Missouri is an exciting thing, kind of turning this around and putting the development of the project right in the hands of the rest of the extension. And that's one of the reasons for this meeting. Sorry to steal your thunder, David.
No problem.
I'm Melissa.
Yeah.
I'm Melissa DiBartolomeo, and I'm a programmer and user experience specialist at CARES. So in context of this project, my job is to better understand what you all and your teams need in terms of the technology, working with the data teams and the impact teams, understanding what we can do to integrate the technology, and really the focus on the users is what Ting and I do. And also stupid things like, well, they're not stupid, but small things like if a button's in the wrong place and it takes someone 5 minutes to find it to generate a report, it's our job to figure out, okay, the button should go somewhere else. So we'll be asking you lots of questions to your teams and to you as individuals, how you do what you do. So please don't mind our excessive questions.
My name is Michael Hardy. I am a senior research project analyst at CARES. I have a lot of background, kind of like Emza, in GIS systems, geographic information systems, getting a lot more into the data side of it. So I'm actually heading up the youth and family impact part of this project. So.
I'm Steve Janetta, faculty of Digital Applied Social Sciences, and I'm the Community Development Education Director.
My name is Sarah Lowe. I'm new faculty in DAS. I have an Ag-Econ regional science background, also a lot of GIS my background. And my research area is primarily entrepreneurship and rural economic development.
Pat Curry, I'm with the Extension Community Economic and Entrepreneurial Development Program.
Great. If we could have the folks on the phone introduce themselves, so it looks like we have quite a few of you. So we'll start with David. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm David Steffes. I am actually here on campus, but I've got to run here shortly. I am a regional director with the Small Business and Technology Development Center. I cover the Central Missouri area.
Great, thank you. Claire, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm Claire Wolf. I'm a community development specialist in the Urban East region and also newly a CES for St. Louis City.
Great.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Gerardo Martinez with Alianzas, reaching out Latino audiences throughout the state. Good afternoon, everyone.
Is it Daniel Cash, right? Yeah, Daniel?
Yeah.
Are you there? I'm muted then. Nooner? Katie? Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Nooner. I am a county engagement specialist / ag business over in Lafayette County on the western side of the state.
Great. Well, thank you guys for joining us remotely. We're glad to have the technology to have you join us remotely if you weren't able to make the drive. We have a good group of people here, so everyone feel free to chime in if you have any questions at all during the first part of the presentation. We're going to be telling you a lot about All Things Missouri and this impact team effort, but feel free to stop us and ask questions at any time. We're happy to stop and have conversation. The second part of today's session, we're going to be having more of a group discussion, talking about use cases and some follow-up steps from today. So let's see if I can get this working. Let me hide this other stuff, right? Gotta hide all of this. Okay. So what is All Things Missouri? So earlier this year, we were charged to develop a website, All Things Missouri, for the University of Missouri Extension. We are really focused on our audience, our primary audience being faculty, staff, and leaders here on campus. But we do have secondary audiences that include legislators, public officials, community organizations, just the general public. But more so, we're trying to focus on you all as our primary audience and our primary set of users. The site houses mapping and reporting tools, and we're hoping that those will help you all make better data-driven decisions as you move forward and make your work life a little bit easier. And we are also, it's also a way to link to related resources that could be helpful specific to your focus area. So why All Things Missouri? As mentioned, it was initially funded in part to provide some continuity for MU Extensive. We did a quantitative needs assessment, and it was a way to present the data that we had collected during that quantitative needs assessment and have it live on. But the expanded vision is really to provide extension faculty and staff with a collection of tools so we can all better understand the issues, problems, and opportunities across the state and in our local communities. We launched the site back in May, and it is live at allthingsmissouri.org, and we're going to be doing a demonstration so you guys can see what's part of the site currently. But we haven't really done any additional development since we launched back in May. We are taking what we call a rapid prototyping approach, though, so that's why we're holding these design sessions from now until December to really learn about your workflow, how you could potentially use a tool like this or additional tools that we could build out, you know, to make your job better, easier, right, that sort of thing. And then we're going to continue to iterate the site over 2019. So everything that you guys tell us in this impact group and the other 3 impact groups, we're collecting and hopefully going to distill, prioritize, and then use that to iterate as we move forward. Why CARES? Why us? Good question. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Chris. We're a selected partner because of our long history. As Chris Barnett mentioned, he's been here since 1992. CARES has been around for a long time, collecting, analyzing, publishing data. And so Extension, we just recently moved under the Extension umbrella, and when we did so, they looked to us to help build a system to provide access to both publicly available data and possibly primary collected data in the future to, again, to help you guys do your job. So we have a long history of working with Extension. As I said, we recently moved into Extension. And we have a history of building these types of tools. So some of you might have used things like the Hack Site, SnapEd. We had community issues management in the past. We have sites like the Show Me Select Heifer Project, MU Impact Portal. Those are just to name a few. There are lots more, but those are ones that you might be familiar with. So what are the impact teams? So you guys are a select group of people that we were given names by regional directors and Extension leadership of folks that they felt like would be good thought partners in this process, folks who are familiar with data, familiar with what goes on in the field and how data could support that work. So we have 4 impact areas, as you know: health and safety, ag and environment, business and community, and youth and family. So we are breaking up these sessions into those 4 impact areas so we can have targeted conversations around what would be most useful for the business and community folks, but we want to make sure that we're keeping our ears to the ground to see where there are overlap with those other groups as well. So we're here to, again, iterate the All Things Missouri platform, share insights regarding collecting data, tool development, and then overall usability. The usability is really going to come in the 3rd design session that we have scheduled for November. And that's where Melissa and Jim King are really going to take the lead on learning about what it is that you like in terms of all kinds of technologies, what you don't like, what would be useful, what's easy to use, those kinds of things. So we're scheduled to meet 3 occasions this year, but we might tap into you guys in between those meetings or after the fact, just to follow up on any recommendations or ideas that we had during these sessions. And what we tried to do is we tried to pull in people that were considered field staff and faculty, campus faculty, state specialists, and regional directors. So we had representation not only from all of the different types of jobs that there are within Extension, but also from around the state as well, because we understand that there are obviously different priorities in urban and rural areas. So hopefully we have a nice group here. We had a good showing this morning for health and safety too. So why impact teams? We want to build a site that you actually use. We know that we can build lots of sites, right, that you might never use. So we're looking to you to help us make it more usable so you can do your work faster, better, easier. This is really the second bullet. It's really important. We are not experts in what you do. You guys are obviously experts in what you do, and we're here to learn. So please correct us if we're wrong. Please tell us how things work in the field. You know, we're here to listen and learn more about your workflow, your outputs, what it is that would be helpful to you. We want to help you innovate. We want to help you access the data that you need to make better decisions. And then we want to hear your ideas, suggestions, criticism, so we can make the site the best possible site that it can be and the most useful. So the goals for this session, to get familiar with all things Missouri. So I'm going to do a demonstration of the site, and some of you have already seen a demonstration, so I apologize if it's your second or third time around. But we're going to talk about layout, tools, data, and resources that are included. After that, we'll take a short break after the demo, and then we'll come back and really talk through use cases. So what we're hoping for you all to share with us is, once you see the site, once you see what's available, just your initial reactions on how you think you would use it, how you think other people in the field might use it, why, what are some of the outputs that you would want to have, those types of things. We're going to review a data list. So we have data lists broken out for each of the 4 impact areas. So we'll kind of go over that data list, talk through ideal data requirements, because our second session is really going to be focused more on that. We'll answer any outstanding questions, and then we'll go over a little homework that we have for you between now and October. Got a whole month to do it, so hopefully not too bad. So goals for session 2. So this will be our October meeting. We're going to talk more specifically about data acquisition, what it is that's missing, identifying some of those gaps, talk about availability updates, what would be most useful for you all, and then discuss the tools and resources that are connected to all things Missouri, and see if you guys have recommendations for what else should be included. As mentioned, that last session, then in November, we're really going to turn it over to the usability folks and have them talk more about kind of pain points of the site or other sites that aren't easy to use, talk about what other tools that you do use in your daily workflow, why you like them, why they work well, and then identify areas of the site where we could do better training or user support.
But I'm ready to play, right?
Yeah, right? Yeah. Get your coffee.
About anything, or does it have to be the, I've already got my complaints out this week. I got
So before we jump into demonstration, I just want to pause and see if there's any questions or comments, either from the folks here in the room or anybody on the phone. Oh, yeah.
Hi. Apologies for being late. Chris Bolcher, Director of CARES, and thanks all for being here. I think what's really exciting about this is that this is something that's really a unique process in our world. A lot of times we're asked to build things, build websites, build data visualization tools. It's very infrequent that we get the opportunity to do an intentional user experience, data fact-finding effort over a period of months to inform what we build. So this is a unique opportunity. And so we have this, and I apologize if I'm saying some of the things you have already. Okay. We have a wealth of data, but data is not where it's at. It's really being more intentional about what we need, and in particular what state level data we need that's a differential, and what tools and all that. So this is really exciting. So thank you all.
Chris, I might just make an observation, and I think you're already aware of this, but I'm John Gulick. I'm a county engagement specialist here, and so and this is the right one for me to be in because of my background. Yeah. But as a county engagement specialist, I was thinking we really need to be familiar with all 4. And I think if I understand right, Megan Martin has been working with you guys that you're going to be doing some training on this with all of the CSs, is that correct?
That's right. So there are multiple audiences with All Things Missouri, but at the core of what we're doing, as you mentioned, this team was hand-selected for the variety of field, faculty, campus, researchers, and campus extension. At the heart of this is, if we're really going to be good about making decisions at that local and regional level, we need to understand what the issues are. We need to be able to acquire data in a non-traditional way. And a lot of our secondary source data is only so actionable because it may not be granular enough, it may not be timely enough. So with respect to county engagement specialists, this is kind of the foyer to the house. You may not be steeped into health and safety as a specialty area, but as a county engagement specialist, you're able to direct people to some of the functions or the reporting tools, et cetera. The other part about this, and this will come up through the series of our meetings, is a field faculty folder. What is the value add that Extension brings to the county commissioners, to economic development folks, et cetera? What data do we have in our hip pocket that's just not thrown to the wind and made publicly available? Because as I've heard with other economic development, community development folks, is just throwing it out there. People can make quite a mess and misinterpret the data. How do you provide the data in a framework that you're facilitating and bringing to the table? So that's part of it. That's where the faculty folder will come in with your paw print. You're able to save data or maps and reports, upload, etc. But I'm getting ahead of myself because my colleagues here are saying this is a UX process. I need to be quiet. But did I?
Well, and I think the other side of that, one of my peers, Chris Kemke, has also made the point that, again, that baseline kind of thing, introductory for the community, for especially county commissioners, things like that, being able to give a baseline, but then also keeping some back. So, Pat and my wife and some other people have also then do the next level where you actually then have a fee base. So I think that was part of the thinking. And two was, again, so what's the core that gets people interested, and they really need to make some basic decisions. But if they really want to get in depth and do a much more of a decision-making process moving forward, then
I think what you're saying is spot on in terms of what the fee base as well is. What is the value, but what are the supports that are provided that they're going to be able to take? And we need to, and our center has been in that mentality for many, many years. And looking at Steve, because you've known this for so long, is really through that revenue generating approach. What is the value add? And again, just stressing that not all data is just going to be public. What do we as a group want to keep data internal? So field faculty, account engagement specialists can use it. And what do we make public as kind of bringing people together?
Pat doesn't share a lot of stuff with me because he doesn't trust me with it.
That's not true.
I know that one.
Yeah, and I think I think you brought up a good point too there around CESs. We have been in conversation, around how this tool can really support this new role of county engagement specialist. We had a meeting yesterday during the live cast that they did. We got through about half of it. Oh no, our camera.
Pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, I know, right? I tried. So we're trying to also learn. We're going to finish watching the live cast that they did yesterday, because I think we're learning right alongside you guys is what is this and what are you going to be doing? How are you going to do it? And
What do you need to support that
right.
work? Really?
Yeah.
Also, if you didn't watch it all the way through, look for the part where Blake talks about Steve Devlin's face. There's a really interesting part there where,
All right.
just a
We'll
cue.
look for that. Yeah.
Just something to keep you watching.
All right. Sounds good. So, all right. Anybody on the phone have any other comments they want to share? Okay, hearing none, we'll get right into the demo here. So I'm going to take about 20 minutes to walk you guys through the site. So this is All Things Missouri. This is what it currently looks like. It is live, so if you want to visit allthingsmissouri.org, you're welcome to do so. We've broken out the site into 3 main parts. So we have maps, reports, and tools and resources. So those are the 3 big areas that we're going to go through today. So the first section here are maps. The first item that you see here is the Missouri Map Room, and if you've ever used any of CARES tools before, you've probably experienced a version of this Missouri Map Room. But this is really where you're going to find access to the 20,000 plus data layers that we have available within our data engine. We have culled that list a little bit to be a little bit more Missouri specific, and also to make it a little bit less cumbersome to search through. What we had, talked about a little bit earlier was, if you search the word poverty, you get about 330 different layers that you can choose from. So how do we really help guide people towards making the right decisions to choose the right layers? I'll go into a demonstration of the map room here in just a little bit, but first and foremost, I would want to point out, so you have access initially to the Missouri Map Room where you can start from scratch. But we all know that not everyone is a GIS expert or is very familiar with a mapping type of setting. And so one thing that we've done is we have developed a series of what we call starter maps. And so these are preloaded maps. They already have layers selected that you can click into. And we have these that are all the maps are focused on one of the 4 impact areas, right? So you can see here we have a substance abuse starter map. So this is looking at substance abuse treatment facilities, opioid drug claims, and what else do we have on here? Mental health treatment facilities. So you can see that it automatically opens this in the map. It's a starting point for those folks who may not know where to start, right? Especially around those issues that we may have, that we identified through that quantitative process as being kind of priority issues across the state. So this is one area where your feedback could be helpful in terms of what are some of those other issues and what are other starter maps that we could potentially populate to really help people kind of get going with understanding and using this type of system.
Not only to help people like the public, but to help Extension CES or regional directors or whoever needs help.
And again, I apologize.
Oh, no,
but,
we're good.
So I just came from Northeast Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
and so our labor shed in Hannibal in Northeast Missouri, of course, crosses the river from Quincy. I was in Pike County, Missouri. Well, Pike County, Illinois, we've got people going back. And so does it also have the capability of surrounding states, or at least the immediate boundaries?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. So what we've done is we've automatically zoomed into the extent of Missouri because we felt like that's where most people were going to look. But most of this data, I won't say all of it, most of the data that's included is available nationally though. So if you wanted to do some exploration in Illinois or Utah or, find a peer county somewhere else in the nation, that capability is here.
Great.
And as we dove into more of the state level data, what is the complementary state level data in Illinois? So with all things Missouri, what we're doing is very different than before, as I said earlier. It's really focusing on, we've got all this national secondary source data. But if we focus now on state level data that's not aggregated up nationally, that's fantastic. And then there's also regional and local data acquisition. And that's so you've got national, state, regional. And we're working with UMSL right now on a regional data alliance that is 14 counties, Jamie? 16 counties that cross Illinois and Missouri. So this idea of the fuzzy boundary approaches, we don't lop everything off at the boundary because of these kind of activities you're speaking to. So as we think about data, state level data, but local and regional data is another level on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
So continuing down the home page, we have the next section of the site is around reports. And so we have a variety of interactive reports available to you for each of the 4 impact areas. So you can see here we have ag and environment, business and community, health and safety. So go ahead and demonstrate how the report works at this time. So first off, what you're going to do is you're going to select a report area. So we've tried to build in some flexibility here, understanding that sometimes you may serve one county, but sometimes you may serve a group of counties or you may serve an entire region. So you can select a variety of geographies for your report location. So you can either select a couple of counties here, You could select just one county, or we have pre-populated these extension regions for you with the counties that are included there. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to select a couple of counties that I know are next to each other here. So you'll see I made 2 selections, and then we get into the data indicators. So we have a pretty broad warehouse of data available, and what we've done is we've pre-selected some data that we felt was most relevant to business and community. But really, this is where we're going to be leaning on you all to say you've missed these, or the ones that you've included don't make sense, right? So at this point in the report creation process, I can either select one indicator, or I can select multiple indicators by choosing an entire category. So here we have a variety of demographics. So I could choose all of these demographics if I was interested, or I could just select a couple of them. Another thing to note here are the information buttons next to each of those indicators. If you click on those, it does give you additional information. So you can see the data attributes, you can see a quick map with that information, with the counties you've selected outlined. If we have the data available by population group, so anything age, race, ethnicity, or gender, we'll try to make that available when it is available. And then a link back to the original source. So if you did want to dive in deeper to the methodology or collection process, you could do that by getting back to the original source very quickly. So here you can see we have some income-related indicators here, so business and community-related stuff. Again, I can select one or many of these. We have some workforce indicators, and then we have some social factors. So again, this is just a small subset of what we have available that we've pre-selected, but there are more things that we could include here, and we're really looking towards you guys to help guide us to adding additional information. So the output of the report you can get in a couple of different ways. So the comprehensive report is going to give you all the information that we have around each of those indicators you've selected. We're going to show data for each county, which means that we're going to be able to see breakouts and an aggregate. I'll show you that. I already talked about population groups being age, race, gender, and ethnicity, and then show maps when available. So you can turn that on and off in case you want to print the report, because black and white maps don't look very good. We also have a quick facts report, which is just a series of data tables. We have the ability to export this to Excel. So if you did want to take the information and do some additional analysis, you could import it to another system or do so in Excel very easily. And then we've broken out the source and methodology. So you still have access to that information, but it's not included or wrapped up into that report. So I'm going to go ahead and just open a comprehensive report. And so this is what we have as a starting point here. So what you'll see, let me scroll down, just look at indicator. So we have the indicator name here at the top. You can also see the location, so you can double check these are the actual counties that you wanted to select as part of your report location. And then we have the first indicator here, which is population geographic mobility. We have a STEM sentence that tells us a little bit about this indicator in relation to the geography that we've chosen. And then we have a data table that shows us basically the same information. What we see here, though, is the report location. So this is an aggregate of the 2 counties that we've selected. So we're showing both Boone and Callaway in this report location area, and you can see the data for each of those areas. We also have it broken down by county individually, so you can do some comparison work if you're interested. We have the state of Missouri and then the rest of the United States for benchmarking. Right underneath here, we do have links again back to the original source. So if you're interested in getting that information, you can. We have an inset map, so you can see again the outline of the 2 counties you've selected. And then we have here a map of this information by track. So one thing that's important to note is oftentimes you'll see the data table is displaying county level values. But if we have the data available at a smaller geography, that's what we'll show in the map, because we understand that that's usually more meaningful to look at it in a smaller geography there. You can view these maps in the map room, but just by clicking this view larger map button, it'll take you right into the map room and you can play around with it. This is what some of the population breakouts look like. So here you can see this is for race and ethnicity here alone. And so we do have some interactive charts and dials. You are able to turn things on and off so you can look at comparison and do some benchmarking there. Let me get down to an indicator that has a dial. So one thing that we've done differently in this reporting system in comparison to others is that we have implemented this little hamburger menu so you can jump between indicators, hopefully very quickly. So here you can see I've got an income inequality index. Again, you can see the aggregate for the report location. You can see the breakout for each of the counties, benchmarked to the rest of Missouri and the rest of the United States. We've also done this in a dial over here on the right side, so you can see here the state of Missouri and the rest of the United States. Doesn't look like we have any map information here. And this is a good example of a dial that shows you red and green numbers, so whether it's good or bad in comparison, right, to that state and national data that we have in there. So that's a quick overview of just the report. So you can get that sort of information, those components, the data table, the STEM sentence, any dials and charts and graphs that we have available for each of those indicators that you selected. I
figured out a great Christmas present for you guys.
Oh yeah? What's that?
So the CESs, and especially in the rural areas, we're in triads. We're in 3 counties, a couple or 4. But again, if you did the quick facts with our 3 counties when you were introducing this, man, you would, you got the first level already there.
Yeah.
You got us tempted already. So I bet you get some Christmas presents for that one.
That'd be great. Yeah.
And that's a good point, Jane, back on the original location selection. We can do groupings like that are specific for the business and community groups or CES that are, when you pre-select those 3 counties, they would just go down to their group.
I think it would be a great way to give them, again, I'm going to be a little bit more familiar with some, but again, I'm not as familiar as many. But again, it'd be like, oh, wow, look at all that stuff. Now I can play with it.
Yeah. So with the triads, would there be any interest in comparing across the triads?
I think at a second level, but the first level is for most of us, we just got to get familiar. Not all of us are necessarily. I'm a little bit unique because I moved from one region to a whole different region. Most of the other people are going to be in regions they're somewhat familiar with and probably counties that we're working with. But we've got enough new people. I don't know, Steve, how many? We got probably 30, 40 new CESs being hired. So they might be completely unfamiliar. So again, if you could give them that level, I think that would be just a great, it's kind of, again, it's that baseline that you were talking about before. Give them a sample of it that would be very usable right off the bat. And then I think it would really get them ready to start playing with the tools, I think. So.
But you could do control click for 3 counties and it would still show up as one on the report area.
Yes. For that report location, it would show you the aggregate and you could still see the breakout for each county too. Yep. But yeah, we could predefine the geography, just so people could select it.
Another layer.
Well, you're doing our work. Let's be honest. I'm asking you to do my work, but hey, but you guys like doing it, why not?
If it's something you have to do every time we pick those same 3 counties, that one of the purposes of the computer is to get by the routine. So we can aggregate them once, use them a million times.
And again, your point, the second point was, then we probably would start. But I'm thinking, I'm not going to be comparing Osage County with Boone County. I'm going to be comparing Osage County with Pike County, or something that's more comparable with other characteristics.
Right. Yep. So. Absolutely.
And I would add to that too that they might already be there, but just the extension region. So for instance, I'm a liaison to the Northwest region. So the first thing I did when I went to the site,
you're self-serving,
try to generate a report, for those counties that are in the Northwest region. I was able to do it. with just a few clicks, and got about 35 pages of results.
There they are. Okay. We do have the extension regions pre-populated here.
Yep. And then the last thought is, is there still enough activity in sort of identified labeled regions of the state, like the Mississippi River Hills region or the Old Trails region, that might be a consideration as well? Not as much as there was.
So this is an example of one with the Northwest region, and you can see there's an aggregate there for that report location. You have a question?
Well, no, not
Okay.
Just just point out, Jamie, you can also download this or share it.
Yep, that's what I was.
Sorry.
Nope, that's right
I'm
where I
ahead
was
of
going. So you heard the spiel enough. I should have made you do it, right? So yes, you can download this as a PDF. You can share it very easily via email or social media, print, or again export it to Excel if you're interested. So that's really a quick overview of the report. So we've done this for each of the 4 impact areas. This one is a specific one for business and community. So part of what we're going to leave you with today is a list of the indicators that we've included specifically in this report for you guys to give us feedback on what you like, what you don't like, what's missing, that sort of thing. So going back then to the home page, we do have also, I'm going to go ahead and display the Missouri map room at this time, and then we'll get into tools and resources. This is the other big tool that we have available within All Things Missouri currently, which is access to our map room and our data engine. So there's a couple of ways to search for data within the map room. You can either browse by topic, and we have categorized all of the data based on the 4 impact areas, plus social determinants. So you can see here business and community. You can see some of the indicators that are listed here. And then ag and environment. So you can get into any of these just by clicking these down carrots. Again, there are information buttons next to each of the indicators, so you can learn more about them before you add them to a map if you're interested. And you simply just click the box next to the indicator to add it to a map. I am going to go back here, and then we also have a list by source. So if you know that you're looking for something in particular, for example, by a specific source, so county health rankings, county business patterns, you again can click through these carrots and get to the actual data itself and see what we have available. I chose one that has, of course, 5 layers. So my favorite way to search, though, is just by keyword. One thing that we have done in this system that's different is we have instituted this kind of predictive text function. So you can choose from one of these that it predicts for you, or you can click search and get the entire list of what's available here. We do have a couple of filters. So there's best match based on your keyword search, or there's release date. So if you did want to push the most recent data to the top, you can filter that way. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose one specific layer. So here we're looking at population below the poverty level. And as you can see, we're already kind of zoomed into Missouri, but to your question earlier, we do have this data for the rest of the United States, so you are able to view it there. I could zoom in and zoom out, or I could enter a location here. Earlier, somebody was interested in Dead County. So as you can see, as you start typing, again, it's predictive. It tries to figure out where you're wanting to go, and it's going to zoom into that area that you've selected. I'll zoom out just a little bit and add some county names so we know where we are in the state. But then we have some other additional options over here on the right-hand side in our legend. When we can find data at other geographies, we do. So we could instantly change this to track level and get some more granular information. We could also see it as a total rather than a percent if we were interested there. So if I click on the map, I get further information about that specific tract that I've selected. We get the census tract number, the actual number, percent of population in poverty totals, and then margins of error for this specific data set. At any time, we could also add data. So if we wanted to look at things like food deserts, we could very quickly add that information. Let's see, let's get the good one, the change one, over, and it would overlay on top of the previous data set that we've selected. And now we can see some additional food desert information in this area. So if we were working in the area of food security, this is a type of map that you could share, again, you know, in a community setting for your own research purposes to target certain populations, whatever it may be. We have some additional tools available. We do have a query and a multi-query query criteria tool available. So if you wanted to look for example, housing developments where market rent is less than $300 or greater than $300 would be more likely, you could do that very easily. You can select data and get data tables based on an area that you've selected here on the map. We have some measurement tools and some math tools, so those make for better maps in terms of presentations. We do also have a swipe layer, so you can look at 2 layers at one time, and you can see here the notation of which data layer you're looking at is there at the bottom. And then we have walk scores as well. So that's just a really quick overview then of the map room and some of the functionality here. You can share these maps very easily, again, via email or social media. You can export them as PDFs or PNGs, or drop them into PowerPoint presentations or grant applications or whatever it may be. So that's all there. We do have some help functions, so if you get left behind, you can always refer back to this help section if you're interested in learning more. Yes, Chris.
So I know in previous iterations of what we've been building out for extension, there's been some criticism that it's a little too complex. It's being able to find data, mapping, and so not everybody, this isn't their bailiwick. If you could bring up the Colorado Food Policy Network.
Sure.
So the idea is we're meeting over the next 3 sessions here is not just what we have, but what we want, what we need, what we want to build in terms of tools and functions. This is an idea of an open source mapping tool that, go ahead, Jamie, if you can bring this.
Yeah, so this is across the state of Colorado. They have food policy networks, and what they've done is you can see here, they built this taxonomy of all the different types of programs related to food security and access to food across the state. And they started to categorize who's doing what where, right? And we're able to use this kind of lighter, what we call leaflet map, right? Rather than that heavier GIS system where you gotta have a little bit more sophistication to interact. You can use this to turn on and off different types of initiatives. And you can also click into the map to learn more about what each of these initiatives are working on, what some of the metadata is around these things. So it's a really nice way to see, again, who's doing what where, what's going on in any specific in any specific area. And it's a great way to, stay in touch with the folks that are, working on a variety of different programs. So there's a good one. I always pick those bad ones to start with, but you can see here, this is one that has a little bit more information, and you're able to get in touch with them very easily.
So thank you, Jamie. So at CARES, we have many, many different clients from around the country. Some are health systems, some are nonprofits. I know you work with Partnership for Healthy America, working with the leaflet kind of framework. So there's a lot that we can draw on. Again, another context setting for why this is so important is we're going to be able to draw off all the work we've been doing for funders around the country, but focusing it on Missouri, focusing the tools, the resources, et cetera, and really being, again, I use the word intentional about what we push out, what we evolve based on our other tools that we built. So I know, Jamie, you're going to talk about homework later. Maybe that'll be, some of those websites might be part of homework, I don't know.
Maybe, right. Okay, so that's a quick overview then of the reporting environment as we know it today, and also the map room. We also have some additional tools then under our tools and resources section. So we're just about done here with the demo part, but we did want to spend a little bit of time showing you this community crosswalk tool. This is something new that we've built as part of All Things Missouri. And really what this is looking at is the intersection of different types of jurisdictions around the state. So for example, if I were to click Senate District here, I could click on any Senate district in the state of Missouri. And what I'm going to be able to do is then also view data. So when we're looking at the state Senate district, it's our initial jurisdiction that we're looking at. We can see what counties are included in that Senate district. We can get some additional information of what percentage of the county is included in that Senate district. We can get some information around who the county commissioners are, the local MU extension office, and we get that for each of the counties. So here we have, 7, it says, each of the counties that are part of that greater Senate district. As we scroll down, we then see that there are 28 school districts that are part of this Senate district, and you can see the enrollment and what percent of students are part of that Senate district that go to school there. As we scroll down further, We can get information around, there's a lot of school districts there, how the state house districts then overlap, or there's 8 state house districts that overlap then with your Senate district, and we have contact information for those folks as well. And then congressional districts, and then last but not least, the MU Extension region and contacts for those folks. So really what we're looking at, like I said, is the overlap or the intersection of those types of jurisdictions. And we see a lot of opportunity here in terms of what other types of jurisdictions could we pull in that would help you identify who all the players may be in terms of, you guys are business development folks, so if you were doing site selection for a Dollar General or something, right? You know, who are some of the districts that might be, or the folks that might be involved in making that decision or be interested in making that decision, right? So things like economic development districts, we talked with the health and safety team this morning, they were talking about fire districts and public health districts. We've had people mention, Department of Conservation districts. There's all kinds of them, right? So we're looking to you guys to tell us what other ones would be helpful for you to see those intersections. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was visiting with the director for broadband at the Department of Economic Development. When he saw this, he immediately said, can you add those economic development regions to this? So from our standpoint, that's easy. We just don't know from a content expertise standpoint what's relevant. So I'm just reiterating what Jamie said, but I think as I'm hearing more about this tool, there's great opportunities to evolve.
Mm-hmm. So that's the community crosswalk tool. And then we also have in this tools and resources section, we have a link to the impact portal. We have a link to Explore Mo Health, which is a project that we worked on that shows zip code level health rankings, the SNAP-Ed tool, and then the Presidential Engagement Fellows. So right now it's a limited number of resources. And again, we're looking to you guys to say, these are the other things that need to be included here. These are the things that we visit frequently that would be helpful, that we want to point other extension folks to make sure that they know that that's a good resource. Yes.
I saw the Zoom thing flashing. I'm not sure if someone's trying to chat it.
Yes, I answered them. Got it. So then we have finally the impact area. So based on the quantitative survey that we had worked on initially, we were able to build out a few areas with some what we would consider sort of data stories, right? This isn't CARE's forte, but so we're again looking towards you guys to say whether these types of things are helpful or not, and if yes, then how can we lean on you or other people in the field to help us round out these stories and continue to build on them and create and have more information here. But you'll see that it tells a little bit of story specific to Missouri around a specific topic here. This is looking at broadband, and then links to a nice map that you're able to see there too. So that's the majority of the site. If you do have any feedback outside of today, you can always reach out to us via email. It comes straight to us and we'll be able to answer it there. Yes, Chris.
They're really regretting that I think it's important to note that CARES is getting out of the business of writing like digital storytelling. What we're really focusing on is the data visualizations, the maps reports, and what we're really relying on are the content experts to provide those stories if and when appropriate. We said the same thing to the health and safety team this morning. So it's just a different model where our previous work was trying to write a lot of narrative. That's not our strength. So that's something to explore through this process together over the next several months, how that might be done.
So I will open it up to questions now about the site. We are going to take a break here in just a minute, and then we'll come back and talk about use cases. But if there's any initial comments, suggestions, or questions about what I just showed you, please feel free to chime in.
I just suggested to Chris's point on the narrative. I think it's not confusing that reports is called reports. I think it's data. If you're not going to do the analysis of the narrative, it's not a report, it's data.
Okay.
When I hit reports last week when I looked on this, I was expecting a report, but I got data. Just
Okay,
like, it just seems a little confusing. So you had mentioned that, I thought, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Melissa's taking notes.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that is helpful.
I'm having a little identity crisis. I'm thinking I've spent 40 years doing the wrong stuff because this looks a lot more fun than trying to deal with my extension council member next week that disagrees with everything I say. You know, this data, you just look at it, doesn't disagree with me.
So in the use cases that were identified in the earlier session today, one of the things that they mentioned though was how can we help you guys create better reports for your extension council, things that they can understand quickly, easily, and then you're able to say, I'm taking action on this because, you know, that sort of direct correlation there. So we get it.
Well,
But,
Sarah, to your point about reports, is there an opportunity to add more of meaning making within that report?
Yeah, like I would maybe call it data and report, because there is the export data function. And then if we're gonna add, you know, if you guys are getting out of the writing business, but we collectively decide, no, we need some analysis in there for these CES people, then people can go one route for data and one route for like maybe 10 things we have a narrative about.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Sarah, I think that's a real critical point. Again, I've been dependent upon Pat, especially in the work that I've been doing to get to the interpretation part. And again, I think that's what we're going to need then too. You know, there's a wealth of, I used to do a lot of grant writing and stuff. And as I worked with people, I said, you know, you can spend a whole year, there's 100,000 foundations out there. You can spend a whole year and never find one that matches up with you if you're not selective, if you don't. And again, my mentor and I came up with kind of a 9-step process that started with geographic area and interest area. You know, you narrow it down, and I think that's part of what, with this data we need as well, is so you got more information. I could play here for years and get fired because I'm not getting anything done because I'm just having fun. You know, look at this, isn't this neat and this? But again, without being able to say, okay, so what do our local decision makers really need? What are they asking for? And again, I think that's part of what I'm thinking. That's what, with Rob, with our workforce unit, I'm hoping with Sarah, with you on board. And I know Pat's been doing it for years. So I think, you know, that's part of the complementary team that hopefully will, you know, great resource. Now, how do we even make it even better?
So you're not getting fired, but getting promoted because you're making meaning of a process that takes us to something.
Yeah.
And we don't have the process.
Yeah.
So that's really great. That's a great insight there, is that how do we build out that geography to funneling it into what's needed?
You keep up, you might get it done.
All right, so it's just a little before 3 o'clock, so I'll give you guys.
Folks on the phone have any questions?
Oh yeah, anybody on the phone have any other questions? Okay, here in silence. So we're gonna just take a quick break. We do have refreshments and cookies and stuff in the back here. The restrooms are down the hall to the left if you need to have a little break. And then we'll just come back here in just about 5-10 minutes or so.
Great.
And watch the cord. Sorry, this room is not set up perfectly, so we have cords around.
Oh, down the hall,
Right.
Right.
Martha Ray.
And don't take that left. You'll get some bad action for you.
Yeah.
She had some fun with
So
looking at that.
What's that? Did you see the all things?
He's heard me present it. You've heard me present it now at least 3 times.
So you could like help
You can
do
demo.
that.
Yeah.
Then
We're putting you in charge of second half of the
I'm okay.
She does get the.
And I'm so happy. I had no idea. I thought you were a little meeting. I had no idea what we were gonna
Our first version was what we
They had been supporting that. Now I'm sure they have more experience, but it's still 3 years ago. Yeah, right. So that's really, and you're right. There's stringing along, experience, having goal or presentation. I've been sitting here thinking about thinking outside the box ways to look at and Neil Clemmy is doing that work and I think what you've got is sort of like the materials.
After the last conversation, we're trying to figure this all out.
I submitted an application to be given access to the overall data sets that are somewhat protected under like the Department of
But I think you're setting up. But I'm not. Well, and that.
And I got access to some of those, but I haven't had any time to useful for what we talked about.
There are lots of toolkits.
You guys belong to not that I've been, no, I knew that.
There's a lot of awareness that are out there. That's exciting. I'm excited. Yeah, but United Way, yeah, see, I am sure her she is one of those who I really get that.
Oh, yeah, I'll find it out. Yeah, it would be really good to just meet.
That'd be good to, I haven't really thought about it. Really?
I know.
What they do.
Right. But let's work on something else. Right, exactly. We don't have to all do that legwork. There's certainly different, we don't want to take over anyone else's part, right? But, we have all of our different strengths and different applications. Right. So we can share that. Find out what,
the market in Dakota, but.
Yeah, and
Well, I gotta see you.
oh, I like it. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah. Oh, that's it. Yeah, it acts. Well, right now, that's what I'm just trying to figure out. I was telling her. Yeah, look at that. And we need, I don't know.
Well, great, too.
Yeah, no, I was thinking
The
I'm
next
not
thing
sure
we'd
what
like
we're
to see is mayor across town. You can see how much step that down. I'm sure they published a blue book or something here.
Right. So I can only put certain level out. Like, I think you had made that one right up there. They don't be outside it. So that's the hard part. Like, I know a lot of people right? So you might have a collective, right, or you find
Because that's something we do. I want to know.
And,
Oh, no, we'll get to it here. I'll bring it up.
You guys and Eva and Brad, that was really helpful.
Yeah. Well, they thought that they were coming by the other card.
Sorry, David.
I'm sorry for trouble. And the second troublemaker. Yeah, keep your eye on that.
Now. I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, we have anybody left on the phone?
Yeah, we still have quite a few people left here on the phone, so I turned our phone back on so they can hear us. They didn't have to hear all of our chatter from before. So it's great though that you guys were having good conversation. So the next part of this that we just want to spend some time listening to you all and really thinking through some use cases. So if you've used some of our systems in the past, how have you used it? What was the scenario? What type of information was most helpful? How did you share it with others? And what was the desired outcome of sharing it? So those are just a few prompt questions. We're happy to go outside of that though, but really just want to turn it over to all of you to talk through some potential use cases for these types of data and tools.
I'd be happy to begin.
Okay, great.
I think we've got a lot of opinions about this, I guess. Certainly we've talked about some of these previously. And so for the last 3 years in Exceed, we probably are doing about 100 sort of data-driven products a year. Maybe 20 of those are stand up and deliver, 80 of them are profiles of all sorts. I have never used your data at all, and in large part because I've always had my own databases I guess I work off of, and so I'm a pretty astute user in that way. But I would run into all kinds of problems. One is you have so much there that it was just hard, and most of the requests, if you do this very long, you start to see their themes. So there's certain types of data people look for all the time. So there's just too much there. It's like and from working with lots of users over time, it's the same thing. The poverty example you brought up, where now they publish, what were they, 7 or 8 different thresholds. It's like just crazy. So people will call and they'll start asking, so what's 185% of poverty?
Right.
Why do we have that number? Like, what? So I think there's just too much there. And this idea of being able to build outputs, and I think Sarah kind of started to hint at that the system really needs to generate a lot less, but a lot more focus on critical issues, at least the way we've kind of imagined it. And talking with some people who are moving into these CES jobs, one of the things that I think is going to be terribly useful for them is to have that 30-minute data-driven presentation that's standardized across the state, probably at a county level, but I think it also has to have some place-level sort of data. Urban places, this is going to be a disaster and difficult to do, but in much of the rest of the state, I think it would be very possible. So that we actually have that automated so that it's so standardized that nobody's going to make a mistake, and that it becomes closer to an information product. So it's not only just going to say, here's how population has changed, but it has, so from the community development perspective, when you see population decline, that should trigger some response. And so these places often don't even know how good or bad they are. And that's the next thing. It has to be somehow benchmarked in a way that is really meaningful. And I think that's something else that's very solvable and easy to do.
By benchmark, are you talking about context, or are you talking about thresholds for acceptability? What are you talking about?
Well, what you're sort of doing now with a state, a national. Well, I'm thinking. So we know that. Well, and here's the other reason that I've rarely used your data. Change over time. My view of the world, crucial. And with most economic variables, because you see
So for instance, if you're trying to describe population change, we start at 1900, to be perfectly honest. Because if you look at rural, especially rural counties in Missouri, and you track them, and you get to 1970, what happened? What happened? 1970. The rural renaissance. Yeah, you had this exodus from urban area. There's a story, a compelling story. We were just doing this presentation yesterday in front of some of our own people. And, you know, you get to that, you're asking, what happened? And they're like, well, interstate highway system, urban violence had reached a peak level, and people wanted to get out of the cities and move to the country. And what's interesting in Missouri is that stuck. Most rural county, almost every rural county in the state, even those up in the middle of nowhere, northern Missouri, grew. And so some of those kinds of stories get people thinking, well, you know, so Phil, I understand now what drives change. Now, how we do that here, I don't know, but I know you guys are masters at taking the data and putting it into that format where we could serve it back out to our CESs in a way. We'd have to think about that. We kind of kicked it around a little bit.
So it would give them a summary of what
benchmark, time series, and maybe with that.
The visuals, I mean, that's the key component, making it accessible and standardized, right?
Yeah, and I think at the county level, I've even wondered whether we can't write scenarios or do something where we audit, like an AI type. We know that they do that now, and you guys, I think you guys are gods, so.
You can do it.
You haven't left to the offering.
And so I think that
I talked about Christmas presents. I was getting close.
So Pat, help me understand what you're talking about here. Are you talking about then a very specific set of steps and methodologies and data tied to a certain process? I'm wondering if we're talking about a very specific tool there versus the additional need for general access tools. Somebody's come into the office asking a question about X, and I need to go drag that out and see what it is. That maybe is slightly outside of that area, and you would need access to the poverty of 185 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That just help them understand. So maybe we're talking about two different tracks here of one delving into a very specific area. We're hoping to support exactly that with the All Things Missouri.
So one's like writing grants. Well, you know, for a grant application, you're going to need 185.
Or the general population.
But if you're making decisions locally and trying to decide, well, what strategies should we be locally, then the questions that Pat is talking about, how did we get here? Where are we going? You know?
So it takes me a week to put together with like a 4-hour data for decision makers workshop to plow through the data, get it organized on a page, look at it carefully enough against all the benchmarks, run some statistical tests, and I'd like to do that in an afternoon. And so I look at this, I have this very selfish objective, and I have every confidence that we can get there. But I do think, and Sarah and I, we talked earlier in the week, and I tried to tell her, these guys, they can do anything we want them to do, but we got to make sure they know what we really think will work. And
so, I mean, just hearing, like, in terms of some low-hanging fruit for adding to the current set of tools, more trends over time and longer trends over time, and more kind of targeted and impactful economic data. I mean, we don't know what that is, really.
Simpler. Well, it's actually population change, how age changes. So it's in Missouri, age is becoming really important in some places. We have some emerging retirement centers in the state, and it's just amazing.
My house.
Now, nearly 50% of the population receive a Social Security benefit. And so figuring out how we piece all that together in a meaningful way. But the big stuff: population change, employment change, how people are organized in households, and how that changed over time. The income, and of course income's complicated because we've got everything from the census money income versions to the EPA per capita incomes, which are easier to work with at the county level. and I'm thinking that's part of our homework, is that we're gonna come back with those ideas.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think in terms of your use case, what you wrote there, standardizing the data for decision makers program, that's, I think, the use case.
Yeah. These are just mostly, we're gonna clean
Yeah.
this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there, right? So.
Pat saved the best for last.
Yeah.
Well, and so I do give you one more example. Right now, I see no place data needed. Really need place data, in my opinion.
Oh, it's in the map.
Place.
It's in the map, but not the report.
Incorporated place.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be great to pull places into the data.
So here's a really fascinating calculation, always resonates with an audience. So we take a county, what percentage of the population lives in an incorporated place and lives outside of an incorporated place, and how has that changed over time? So I usually do that, again, starting in 1900 and then marching it all the way forward to 2017. And again, people are kind of going, so these county commissioners that are just allowing unbridled development in the rural parts of county, that are always saying, we don't have any money to maintain roads, we don't have any, like, no, yeah, don't tell me, because you're letting people build houses everywhere. So it's kind of interesting how that, we talk to these folks and they're going, you know, I never really thought about it, but that's kind of true. We have counties with 40% of the housing units are for seasonal use. You know, another, just like, that costs you a ton. So even something where we might be able to calculate the cost of having a house that's empty most of the year would be absolutely fascinating, because in rural Missouri, about 20% of all housing units are vacant most of the year.
Well, that's very helpful,
So that's
Pat.
all.
That's good. I know that, Gerard, you had a use case that you had kind of chatted to me. Do you want to unmute yourself and speak up?
Around.
Did he have to mute? Oh, he's sending a message.
No messages. I'm here. Can you talk?
He can talk. I know he can.
Yes, he can. He's not, oh wait, here we go.
He's not on the introduction.
Here we go. Gerard, now are you here?
Hi, Gerardo.
Gerardo?
Oh, no. Okay. Well, you can send us a follow-up
Can
email.
you be his interpreter?
Afterwards. So, but he did have a use case. He was asking about locations of, let's see here, Latino-based agencies and organizations per county. So, we'd love to follow up with you on that. So, okay, yes. All right. So other use cases, yeah. We don't want to make it hurt. So, other use cases. Ralph, Steve?
I was thinking again, and it wasn't the data as much as, but as you were talking about the population in the county or in a city versus outside. I was working in Nevada, Missouri, and we were looking at the elected officials and realized, well, all the wealthy people that had influence lived outside the city. So the elected officials, because of geographic limitations, so you had, the city council was really ineffective, and you had the real shakers and movers are sitting outside the county, which was actually the same, 3-mile radius was the same population as the city limits, So again, how can we use some of this data to help us kind of see what? Now again, data wouldn't necessarily be that one, but again, what's the impact on that? I had no clue that 20% of the houses were empty.
Yeah, vacant for seasonal use.
Yeah.
So I was talking a little bit to Sarah and Steve during the break here, and I think that one of the things that we probably want to recognize is that the new CESs within CED are exactly that. They're new, and a lot of them are still coming in or maybe getting used to this position, and probably the role for that position is going to be evolving over the coming year or maybe more. And one of the things that maybe we can look at as a case is what can we put together to help introduce some of these people to the areas?
How do you get
Give them a leg up on, what's that? Go ahead.
How do you get to know your community?
Yeah, for yourself first, and then, how can you use that to help the folks that you're interacting with?
So you have a whole range, and again, this is, I think you probably understand it, but everybody that's a CS isn't coming from a community development background. We've got ag business people, we've got 4-H people, we've got new people. So
Yeah, but
again,
we're focusing here on the CBD people.
Well, but for the most, but
But,
in general,
but Missouri, all things Missouri is gonna be used by everybody, right? It's not just gonna be the CD.
Yeah.
And again,
And they
so
all
need to
have to,
understand
and
the
it doesn't make any difference where they come from. They still have to be introduced to their community.
Yeah.
I mean, just because you're in 4-H doesn't mean that you're not gonna have to know the same ones as somebody from community development. Everybody has, I mean, whatever your community looks like is who you need to be connecting with.
So from a business and community development, economic development standpoint, it is a handful of things that you want to package to say,
Right.
here, here's your baseline, or here's your introduction to such and such community, or something like that.
Yeah, if we think about it.
Is that a viable use case scenario, and can we move forward?
So if we think about a nutrition specialist who's a CES, what are the community economic development metrics that are going to be most important for them to get an understanding of what's going on within their community? So they might have a lot of great information about nutrition and physical activity programs, but maybe and they know a lot about the sidewalks in their community, but they don't know anything about
Poverty.
the economics or poverty.
Yeah, well, indicators like poverty and income and availability of living wage jobs.
I guess, so use cases around some of those scenarios, around your economy, around your food system, around your population who live in your community.
And really, we've attempted to do a base of that with some of those reports you saw in there, but we really need guidance on this. That was our uneducated guess.
I mean, one thing I would say is that one of the challenges I look at this report is zero context to something. There's no time, there's no change over time, there's no benchmarking compared to any other comparable communities or anything like that. So the new CES walking in there, I could say like unemployment rate is 5% right now. What does that mean? Like has it gone down over time? Is it going up? There's a branch in the county, Caney County in January, they have a 10% unemployment rate. Well, that's no work there.
Yeah.
So, so trying to provide that. Still at 2,000. Yes, yeah. And so, I mean, those sort of issues.
What is an appropriate time frame? Looking at trends over time, how far back? What is a minimal viable time frame?
You've got limitations.
As an economist, I mean, I think in business cycles, so a lot of my research is very business cycle based. At an absolute minimum, I think if we're going to have a key set of indicators, if this is a get to know your county use case, at a minimum, I think back to 2007, I'd say. And so, at least in our area, I noticed a lot of your data was ACS. So that's the real limiting thing because you have this 5-year. Okay, so let's pull that ACS data and get some other data that are annual so that we can look annually. That would be my bare minimum for the business cycle.
The Bureau of Economic Analysis data, which I think you guys actually kind of have, and that's such a gold mine, and especially if you grab all of it. So, for instance, one of the BEA files, and I don't know if you guys have this or not, flows of money from community, not people, but how much of income in a county is accounted for by somebody who commutes. And I don't know if you guys have done that yet, but that's another one that just people are staggered when they see that, holy cow, we didn't know we were so dependent on neighboring counties for income. And it creates another way. So it's one of those simple indicators that takes just a little bit of manipulation. I got one other, I got a lot of comments here. We were talking about one of the problems of ACS data with high margins of error, and the fact there's currently no indication of quality of the data here, which we know is pretty easy to calculate. The coefficient of variation, you're kind of talking about that the other day, that's something else that, for all those folks out there that don't know this data really well, there's a real concern, especially if you go to using a place level data and they open up that file for that town of 700 and it looks like there's a 45% poverty rate and it's going to be just nonsense.
Yeah, we're through the map. There's some of that margin around many of the data sets.
Well, I saw that you had it published.
It's not in the reports for the most part. One of the challenges there is space on the page, you know. And how do you do that? And you can do things with fonts or color.
I think,
or
yeah,
whatever.
just if we do an asterisk or something,
hover over,
like if you export the data and it's data or pull it up, there just needs to be an asterisk that says this is, and don't get into CDs or MOE, you know, but just say, due to small sample size, this is questionable use.
Right. And plus that's the added thing there is that helpful interpretation. Where you don't have to understand not only what a margin of error is, but what value you're looking at there compared to that amount of people. You go ahead and do that interpretation for them.
And
that is a problem because just this year I probably had 5 or 6 calls from people that had ACS data that had outrageous, you know, estimates of high poverty or something like that, and then and so if our own people are starting to distribute data that have those kinds of problems, we got a problem.
So I think Daniel had another use case that he might want to share. Are you there? Can you hear us? Oh, I just unmuted him.
I would say no.
Everybody,
The timelines, it really depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at land use stuff, you're going to have to go back a lot farther.
So is Daniel on there?
There are changes in the if there are methodology changes in the
Right.
You can't compare back or.
Daniel, did you want to talk about what you chatted?
Maybe we could have the phone.
The phone is on.
Yeah.
And they introduced them.
Yeah. I can sort of hear some background noise.
Can anyone on the phone talk?
This is Kate.
Hello?
Talk.
Hello. Claire.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Dan.
Hello, this is Gerardo.
There you go.
There, hello.
Okay, well maybe Daniel stepped away.
You got a volume button on that thing?
Yeah.
Turn it up a little.
Hi, anyone on the phone? Could you talk?
I can talk. Very
Yeah.
little.
Wonderful. Okay, we're just wondering if it's a technical issue, but apparently not.
I can.
Can you sing?
I can talk very little. It hurts much here.
Yeah,
okay, Dan.
We can't hear Dan apparently. Okay, all right.
So what was his, did he say anything? What was
Yeah, he
his-
did. Here, his comment was, working in the Kansas City urban core requires working with neighborhoods, city council districts, and special tax districts. Then we look at data at these levels. Also, I could use crime, incarceration, and reentry data with these levels. So I think that's something.
One of the, from a data standpoint challenge, it depends upon what the data source is, and there are many data sets that are only provided at, say, the county level, the school district level, and turning those around and distributing those across neighborhoods would involve some sort of analytical technique to do this. There's always an error process, not to say it can't be done, but you need to then educate the users of the dangers of that
Yeah, and
process.
also has a lot, primarily the reason why ACS is in our reporting environment, our initial reporting environment build, as it stands now, was really meant to support hospitals and their needs assessments with their zip code base. They're not really interested in looking at counties. They need groups of zip codes, and that's why we are using ACS. So we work with DEA data, transportation, personal income, things like that, but it hasn't come up as something that we've needed in our reporting environment for that reason. But yeah, it can definitely be added.
I mean, if assess local issues and those kinds of things, they're gonna need more localized data.
Right,
Right.
right. And
You know-
that's the challenge.
And I don't know if this is a good time to bring that up, but the Census Bureau, Chris, you got an email recently about, I don't know if that was brought up here yet.
We haven't talked about it.
So the Census Bureau is asking for public comment around in the 2020 census not having geographies below a county being
No,
public. What is it? What is the
they
phrase?
might get rid of the block group and maybe restrict some of the information of the block data and so on. Did you see that information?
I've
from the state
replied,
demographer?
already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Angela, I think they replied. And what are we saying that
Crazy.
actively attack?
Yeah, they're talking about restricting access to, block level census data has never been suppressed in any way.
Right.
Sarah,
Previous.
from your perspective, what do you, I mean, from a research standpoint, that must be huge alarm bells, or is it, or what do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's partly why I left federal government. I mean, just in the last couple of years, a lot of these research-related things are just not being given the time of day. So yes, several people at my last agency, Economic Research Service, are very worried about these sorts of things. And then when we talk about time trends,
It's gonna be a big gap.
I mean, it's just like when we got rid of the long form and went to the ACS, it really does create this big gap.
Yeah, we're just getting used to ACS.
Yeah.
So, and then on the other front, with Health and Human Services, we've been working with the Health Indicators Warehouse for a number of years, and Angela in particular. The CDC is not making 20+ indicators publicly available anymore that people use for their community health needs assessment. This is really concerning.
Yeah, I had the same, I've been using like BRFIS data from CDC, and as a federal employee, I could get the micro geocodes and stuff.
Yeah.
And then fairly recently, they emailed me like, sorry, you have to be a CDC employee to get more.
And in some areas with RWJF, they're funding CDC to do 500 cities, but that doesn't help rural areas around the country. So,
And that funding will end at some point, and then we won't have any
And
continuity.
that's the thing, that's just so short-sighted.
Right.
so the punchline is, in terms of what we're talking about, is as federal data becomes less available, we need to be thinking about, from an extension perspective, is that we have a national workforce in place. Is it aligned around data collection now? No. Could it be 5 years, 10 years from now? Possibly, but we need to be thinking about another way of acquiring primary data, because we can't keep relying on whether it's the CDC or ACS, the census, et cetera, to help fill in those gaps. So again, extension could be a huge value add if we're intentional around the types of data we're collecting. What can we do? How can we fill in gaps? That's another real opportunity as part of what we're just starting getting out the gate with All Things Missouri. And just wanted to.
I will say to that point, Chris, that's exactly right. We are in every part of Missouri, so we need to think about what extension can collect. And to that effect, USDA is actually doing that exact same thing now with broadband data. Okay, so the national broadband map hasn't been updated since 2014. The data that are currently available are pretty terrible. And so when I was in the Secretary's office last year, we basically blackmailed Verizon. USDA has a contract with Verizon. And USDA also has people all over. You know, we have lots of field offices, lots of regional offices. And so we basically got Verizon to give us data on when our people are doing crop surveys, or in a meat processing plant, what kind of reception, what speed, so we could essentially build our own broadband map. Because we can't trust FCC to do it for us. I mean, but you know, I think people might, I just wanted to say, like, he's not joking. Like, take this seriously.
But you know, this is an issue, though. You know, not just for us and what we're doing, but think about this. It's like the legislature and government who also relies upon all of this. If they aren't realizing it, then it would be for us to have a conversation and saying, hey, we're going to have problems supplying this information and making accurate assumptions and recommendations possibly, you too will have that same problem.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out as a state how.
But the question is it really a problem? I'm sorry, you know, I'm digressing, and
Yeah,
Jimmy's
thank
running
you.
this, so we'll table this, and you go.
I think it's a very important conversation. I'm just
Yes,
checking time, and there's a few people that we haven't heard from. So I just want to give everybody an opportunity to provide or to talk about a use case if possible. So Steve, Rob, Claire, Katie on the phone, any of you guys have any other things that you want to add before we run out of time today?
Sure.
So,
I
yeah.
will, and I'll be quick, and I'll kind of ramble, and Rob jump in.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, you know, at this meeting, kind of falling under the youth and families area, but here at the business community. And I think there are several of us who do kind of overlap in what we do. And I'd encourage maybe even some of those teams that might not have representation from outside of that core area to think about having a health and safety person on the ag and environment team, you know, just so you get that perspective. But what I'm sitting here absorbing, I think, is related to workforce development and K-12 education, youth development. And I was listening to Marshall Stewart, I think, talk to the administrative team and talking about there may be an opportunity for extension to help close the workforce gap in some of those ag-related areas in our state where skills less than 2 years are needed, and then people can start immediately, $40,000, growth potential to 60. So I'm just trying to think of layers, data that we could potentially build into the system that I'm hearing about, seeing, loving, that might focus on things like where are their apprenticeship programs? If I am in this zip code or in this community, what actually are my online enrollment options for any kind of continuing education? I didn't know I could enroll in William Woods, you know, down in East Prairie, you know, okay, so things like that. But, you know, how can we provide data that could help close some of those workforce gap things that we need, and maybe even juxtapose that against where we know there are parts of the state that are having skill shortages. They are looking for this skill or that skill. They can't find the people to hire, and yet we've got all these students sitting over here less than 2 years away of being, you know, on the job. Career and tech centers, I mentioned, I think in our conversation during the break, the After School Network is mapping, kind of doing its own census of after school programs around the state, both those that are school-based, community-based, et cetera. So yeah, that would be potentially, and I think those conversations are already happening. So those are just some layers. The other piece, and then I'll wrap it up here, is just, you know, in our community conversation series that Extension did, the sort of out-migration, in-migration issue was really a strong theme. Now, whether that's actually happening and to what degree it's happening is a big question. And I'm just curious if we could bring some data to bear on that issue to say, in this community or in this county or in this region, these are actually the out-migration or in-migration patterns that are happening. Not only for those youth who are gonna go off and, you know, see the world, et cetera, but also that reverse effect of the, you know, younger adults. Ben Winchester's research in Minnesota and other places that sees sort of, you know, coming back to communities, which I think is the real opportunity and where they could get around and do some strategizing. So thinking about, you know, kind of workforce, closing workforce skill gap, what are the resources there, and then also that migration federation.
Let me interject. Let me ask a question there. Since we're talking about migration, I'm working on a small sub-project on migration right now. I'm using the IRS county to county migration flows. Do you all have a better recommendation for migration data? I've also used the University of Wisconsin.
Sure. Now that's quite good.
Yeah, but not, so they wanted something more current.
Yeah.
Than 2010.
No, IRS is it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Good to know.
You want to follow
Okay,
up?
some of the,
Yeah.
also with the feedback on Steve's comments there, in demographic information about counties, like if you're looking at, okay, we're a population study, but we're losing 18 to, I mean, one of the big issues in Missouri broadly is 18 to 44-year-olds are moving out of the state, and a lot of counties that's going to be, so what is your demographic pyramid look like, and what does that mean for folks there? If they're getting all out of whack. I would put on there not just apprenticeship programs. If you get into that, and depending on the type of program, there's jurisdictional issues that you might have to. So, like if it's a trades apprenticeship program, like there are things that people would need to know that, like, if you live in Boone County and you want to be a sheet metal, this things I know. If you want to be a sheet metal worker, you have to look at the St. Louis program. But if you're in Cooper County, then you have to look at Kansas City. I mean, there's those sort of jurisdictional boundaries. Yeah, it's all based on where you live and where you're working.
Economic zones sort of thing.
They're their own layers, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's basically for the ones that are in the trades, it's based on which union and how their jurisdiction was determined decades ago.
Kind of like what is the training shed?
Yeah, yeah.
You go east to west.
But there are things you put some of that in there, and that information could come out of there. But also, it's not just that; it's what are the community colleges? Because we all community college has their service area there. Who are the higher programs? You could look at things. If there's data, I don't know if there's good data on this, but like, what are the projected trends from that too? Because like where is that demand going? So if you're thinking about going back to a training program now, it's going to be there.
Related to that is more information on working age population. Yeah. And particularly as it relates to. But its utility is more in comparing it. Here's your situation in other places because everybody's going through the same issue, and more serious probably in some of the more remote areas. If a community is going to look at it, we just need more people here to work. So does every other community in the country and half the world. It really has to be put in some sort of context in terms of, well, it's not just how do you get more people like that, but how do you change how you do right in this.
And one thing I will say also, looking at the demonstration there, as I played with it, like there's a whole lot of bells and whistles for most. Going back to the CES use case, that I can see myself getting overwhelmed by the bells. Oh my gosh, which layer, all this sort of stuff.
And you have a PhD in geography.
Exactly. And so I mean, having it, while it's good to have the data and different layers available, having some very simple, like here are 10 maps that you should be paying attention to.
Yeah. Right.
That for probably 110 of the 150 CES, that's not the highest.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're all kind of converging on that we need to pick.
We also do the more granular look at how our population is changing as it relates, particularly the youth population in Missouri. Now, almost 26% of the population, non-white population. You could sit down with anybody anywhere in the state, they wouldn't believe you, except for a few places where it's just overwhelming. And I think people knew that stuff. It's been on the news and stuff for years that this was coming. I'll have then it's actually here.
Conversation. It's like, oh no, we all look alike here.
Yeah. I don't know. 59 rural counties, 94% white. I think we're like that. 59 rural counties, 94% white.
I really appreciate that input, and that's what is so important about all things Missouri and what we build out is what is the audience? Because in the morning session, a researcher at the table said, I can never have enough data. Bring it on, in so many words, bring it on. Whereas with other audiences, simplicity and just providing that. So we have it's not a tension, but we just got to have a real good pathway to get it both of those audiences.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna
go right ahead, and then Claire on the phone. Yep.
Sorry.
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna, we had talked about having something behind the pop print that was like proprietary data or something, but maybe we need like two home pages. One is like the CES or basic county commissioner, and one is like the researcher, or like some little like, if you're a real deal researcher, click here. And if you're not, click here. You have PhD in geography, click here. Otherwise, click here.
Yeah. You work with people, or are you a nerd?
Well, we've had the concept of some hubs in the past that spin off to topic-driven or topic-specific sort of data and tools. And
so maybe that's one thing.
And maybe I tell you that you drop down into that area as a subset of it all.
And then we will need some organizing around the program areas that we're doing within the CES
Claire, you had a question or you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yay! Yeah.
I could see, so one of our programs, Neighborhood Leadership Fellows, is focused on the St. Louis Promise Zone, which is part of St. Louis City and part of St. Louis County. So in terms of figuring out a designation for how to kind of present the data just for the Promise Zone, I don't know if that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I did my master's thesis on how to geocode enterprise zones.
We did talk because we're working with Paul Sorensen and Paul Evanson, and I think that's part of the plan for that St. Louis Regional Data Alliance. But in general, we should think of ways at CARES we can accept requests for custom geographies, you know, for projects like that would make it more useful and helpful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'll add, for some of our tools, for a long time, we allowed folks to go in and draw their own custom boundaries for our reporting tool. That's something that come 2019, we're putting behind a paywall for our general public audience. We can have a conversation about whether that would be valuable for all things Missouri to have as something that's free public, or I say free, but you know, someone's got to pay, but you know, something that could be available behind top rent versus something that's a value add or.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we're real organic with as issues come up. How do we have these containers, these hub areas, and what is the shelf life? What is the shelf life of this hub? So we don't have a lot of dead wood over time. We just say, okay, we wrap this up, let's archive it, put it away, but provide a way to have a container for specific geography, specific data, and then more like to your point earlier around reporting that is really making meaning of that data. So that we need to be nimble in that regard. That's what we're doing.
So Claire, by the way, send me a map with those boundaries. So we have a tool that we use that sits on top of ArcGIS. We basically buy a block level census data.
Oh, cool. Okay. So I think we're just wrapping up this first year, and we're training all of these leaders in this particular area with you know, kind of the lofty goal of having broad community improvement in this area by empowering the residents who live there to make policy change and practical change in the community. And so, you know, thinking about all this, it would be helpful to have some of these indicators in terms of Promise Zone geography, and then looking at this over time as we continue to do this program. So I will send you that.
Yeah, so I don't know if we want to go there, but at the higher end, so we get lots of requests for drive time analysis. I mean, just guessing, you guys can do that. Yeah, I knew you would. I knew you could do everything. And the idea of drawing on a map, as you've mentioned before, that's a good. So there's a question: do we invest in buying a block level database like that, or not? I don't know. But there's the sort of thing that people start to pay for when they can sit down and do their own drive time.
You're right. So that's one of the other things we want to do with tools in general through extensions is start looking for ways to put some finance some of these things, because as we're moving forward, we need to be more aware of the business end of some of this.
Oh yeah.
You said earlier, Steve Erville before.
So we've got 5 minutes left. So first, I just want to thank you all for the time that you've given us today. We're really grateful for the wonderful conversation that we've had, and that you guys have agreed to be part of this group with us. So we are meeting again in October. Hopefully we haven't bored you to death today and that you'll come back in a month, right? But in the meantime, we have a little bit of homework for you guys in terms of thinking through some of these data requests, right? What are some of the things you feel are low-hanging fruit? What are a little bit higher-hanging fruit? What should we prioritize, or what would you prioritize? Thinking about these use cases and your workflow, what would really make a big impact now and down the road? So some questions to think about, and we'll send you this PowerPoint afterwards. Just are the data publicly available? Are they easily downloadable or capturable through an API? Is the source reputable? Are they updated? Are they available at a county level or smaller? The answer to some of these could be no, and that's fine. We're just hoping that the next conversation we have where we really dive deeper into some of the data, we can answer and talk about some of these things about why or why not prioritize the acquisition of something like you're talking about a little bit. So what I have here today, you guys can take one of these, this is the data list for the community and business report that I showed you during the demonstration. And so if you just want to take a little bit of time to look through this, we'll also send you our larger data list, and you guys can look at that. It's much longer and it's very comprehensive, so you can take a look and see what we do have available, again, to help start to identify maybe what some of those gaps are in terms of things that you would want for us to acquire and for what purpose. So those are a few of the outstanding items. We have about 3 minutes for final questions and comments.
Did you want to give that in digital format?
We will, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sometimes it's nice though just to kind of be able to flip through and look at things, right? So we do have it, we will give it digitally. We will provide the larger list also digitally. This is specific to business and community because this is an easy task, or not easy, I shouldn't say easy. This is a conquerable task for us before December to say, these are the things immediately that we want to change about this report to make it better. We know that we have the right people in the room here and on the phone to make those decisions. There is that much larger conversation about what else and why else and long-term planning, right?
So, would it be good for this particular impact group to think about the 2 tracks we had identified earlier, the simple introductory, here's my community set of data that should be put together, and then that more in-depth set of data that would support things like what we're talking about in the St. Louis area, or something like going to a commission.
The third route might be some of that kind of issue-driven data and reporting that we talked about.
Yeah, and I think taking that, I almost did a stair step. Okay. So you got really data-driven up here. You got a basic level, but then, so what's the next level past the basic? That could be issue-driven. So so if you got a particular issue, then what's the the commuting or the population, or so what's the next level of analysis or data that would be helpful for that? That would be something for me that would be helpful as a CES, to have that baseline. That, and again, like I said, Chris Kemke, what he's doing right now, because he's done the data for decision makers with Pat. So that's his introduction that he does with the county commissioners. But then, and his kind of ways to get his introduction as the new extension guy around and show some value. But then the next level then is working with Pat right now. Then the next is okay. So then he gets the questions, and then he takes it to the next level. So how do we go to the next level? And I think that's the thing, and eventually you get to a level where you say, well, now we can do, much more in depth, and we can either do a building local part, prosperity, or we can do just a very focused data.
So most of the CESs are going to come to data needs around specific issues in the county. There's probably not going to be much of a rhyme or reason or pattern to it. Michelle's doing some housing stuff because it's a big deal where she is, but housing stuff where Claire's is going to be very picture. And so part of it is they don't necessarily need to know do that. They just need to know how to get those answers. If they get to the extent of where they can work with some of that data themselves, but there's a lot of them that just
so they need something basic to help interpret it.
But I think the interpretation is the key thing. So if we just right now, if we're just saying, because I agree with Steve that there'll be very specific questions. But if we just give them data and they still don't understand what data means, because you're going to have to flesh it out a little bit.
To have a resource for them to work with, not necessarily we don't want Pat developing 5, 6 stages of courses, and or one course for every different data need that comes up. We have to think more.
Well, at the same point, I think Pat probably could already start to develop. I think, like you said, you've seen trends of questions. You've seen,
Well,
and again, I think we could kind of.
I imagine next time we meet, we're gonna have 4 product ideas for you guys. So.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're not gonna be able to do analysis automatically, but I think if we can add enough context, like the time trends or the comparative geographies that folks on the ground should be able to give them as many tools as we can for them to do the analysis. Because we can't automate the analysis.
Don't you think that, part of that is the training of this? I mean, you don't just say, here's your data, from here you should be able to move on, or whatever. There needs to be some Zoom trainings and things like that, where you can talk through these things. These have been developed to give you here's the bottom line and get started. But this is how you use them, and this is how and examples of, you might have it, you might want to go, like Chris, goes to the commission and says, here's an example of, how you might introduce what we do and what you can do for them or what they might need. And I mean, so you build the story through some training so that they go, oh, now that makes sense. Because I'm telling you, you threw something like that at me, and I'd have to figure out my own story. And I wouldn't know all those things. I would know my part of the story, but I might not know all of them. So that's where the training comes in. I mean, I've been a trainer all my life, and you can have absolutely the best product and poor delivery, and you might as well just forget it.
Thank you for that. That's a very good comment. So we definitely need to keep in mind across all of our impact areas.
Right.
Across all of our parts areas. There's got to be a biocomponent to the launch.
Part of what I've been hearing, listening to the discussions about what the CESs are going to be doing, the word that keeps coming up is relationship. Again, for us that are in community development, we know that. That's what we've been doing our entire life. But again, that whole relationship, one of the situations that Rob in the new unit with workforce development we're looking at is doing some labor analysis kind of, and Pat helped with. We actually had a county economic developer that I was working with that now Chris Kempke's working with up in Pike County. They had been doing a regional labor analysis out of the economic group out of Moberly that was doing the whole regional thing, done it for a number of years. The local economic developer said, well, I can do that, but all I'm getting is all this data. Where we just made our distinction was extensions there for the long term. We can get you that same data, but then we can help you figure through what it means.
Makes sense.
And
So
we can
there-
help you develop strategies. And so that's one of the things I think we should be thinking about.
To bring that back to then the data conversation and the homework to do next time is we need to think within this context and see not only what data should be involved, but maybe a priority for that information, because it may be great to know, the pork chop pipe manufacturing or whatever, but is that really the highest priority for Tatum Missouri right now? I don't know. So you could go on to have that. Jamie, how are you expecting to receive that information in the data list? I know we've got several folks here that may be able to provide quite lengthy sets of suggested data sets.
Yeah, so I think we'll send out reminders for the October meeting, and part of that reminder will be a request to either submit that to us in an email or a Word document or something, and
prior
then prior to the meeting, or if you need more time to just bring it with you. I think anything that can be submitted and reviewed ahead of time would be great, but we recognize that you guys have full-time jobs and that sort of thing too. So we really around the questions or the kind of requirements or light requirements that we have here, just some ways to think through. If you do have some data sets in mind, if you could answer some of these questions related to them, I think that will really help the flow of the conversation next time.
Well, and also just from that general standpoint, it's educated us on other ways, other concerns you see about that data and how it's going to be used. Especially if you're taking it out to the commission or the advocacy groups, et cetera.
For future meetings, for demonstration
Okay.
Grab that.
Yeah, they are. So, well, if you guys want to stick around and keep talking, feel free to do so, but we're after our time, and so you're welcome to leave and take a
Thanks
cookie.
to the folks on the
Yes,
phone.
yes, I did send them a chat. Thank you guys for joining. And we'll, like I said, send up follow-up notes, recordings, those types of things for you guys, and then we'll see you again next month.
You have a
So,
date in mind at this point?
I think I already sent you a calendar
Oh,
invite
okay.
for it.
Yeah.
Gratitude to October, November already.
Right, we should have sent you calendar invites for all three meetings, but we'll be sure to double check that in our follow-up for you guys, so, yep. Cool, okay, thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you guys very much. We're very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're gonna have,
Well, that's what I mean. I think I met your husband when he was doing bragging about you. I was at the Mid-Mo RPC and he was talking about property.
Yep, he came home, yeah, I did, yeah. Oh, yeah, yep, he came home that day, and was like,
Yeah.
he didn't say your last name right now. And then it dawned on me, and I was like, it's gotta be, it's gotta be,
Somebody with extension, but,
yeah,
I
so we
He's just down the hall.
Yes, yep, I am. So, yeah, we live in the comments, and so we live in Cali, we're after area. Very well, because they've got from a lot of people are on board, so I think
That's good.
All right. Sorry. Good luck. Yeah, you're like,
and then, and you know, thanks, Joanne. So I think it's gonna, I mean, the polling is going, and they're gonna, as long as the outside things go up, right? Or there's some, you know, big opposition that comes out against it. I think it's really low.
All their and then different focus on those 29. It's great, but otherwise.
yeah, yeah, it might be very complimentary, I'm more.
Yeah, I don't know, really fair. There's a big, I mean, that's the next set of people that like trying to do Right, I mean, I guess, I think that's helpful, well, especially having conservative, be in favor of tax, that's what we're at, right? Right, yeah, it must be really bad out there, right? Be safe on it, you gotta just safe on all other ridges, right? That's what I heard about, I'm like, oh, yeah, not the water for every day, so. Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Actually, I'm going to pull. I'm really.
Right now, we don't know what you guys want. I think we got pretty good. That actually, so we know that people think that. We're like pretty fast. Because like, oh yeah, like there's some great people. So yeah, I'm excited for this. Sure.
My wife and I. So while we were sitting there, like this person did. That's what made it so well.
Really,
maybe
like I said, you guys have a whole bring it down to the
do a little analysis.
as you were talking.
And then we have moving it up.
My
wife.
that would be helpful, like helping them start to think about that there. Like indicators of the course, here's something. Even though it doesn't seem like.
This far out.
That really sparked
This far out, I mean,
They're
starting with, all of them.
Well, they need people in the jail now because I know like it. I did it for your family too, so many of them, but not all of them.
Looking at it.
So, yeah, I would take it out, yeah.
That's
Thank you.
imagery, up there.
Do I need to put together?
Somebody else is doing
No, we have them all printed.
Mostly on it.
Jinjing did that for us.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm a hero.
Thank you so much for being here.
We're all in this building now, or?
We're all here, yeah. Yep.
Much to the chagrin of everybody else in the building.
You guys, so that,
We're not a huge group, I don't
No,
think.
we're not.
You
Yeah.
you get so excited about data, you start running up and down the hall.
We did, yeah, actually.
I was down and staring at my head there.
Where are you? Are you in the Boone County office then?
I'm in those three.
Oh, you're in those, right. Okay.
Which is actually my wife's home county.
Nice. Oh, cool. I'm so sad that the popcorn shop there closed. It was so good. Sorry, that's what I know of Lynn. They have this popcorn Buddha place and they made the best, like flavored
So how
popcorn.
did you discover that? Because that's a ways away from Oklahoma.
It is. My husband did. He was driving through there with someone. Yeah. And
It's right on Highway 50. That's amazing. Our office is.
Well, yeah.
Well, I just courthouse, it's right on Highway 50. I never, I traveled up and down 50 because we used to, basically,
yeah.
I had no clue how much travel. I've gotten used to the point now where
That's exactly.
there's so much travel.
Yeah, there is. You're not the
So
only
the
one.
previous
People have
office I was
to-
in was Pike County. Well, the courthouse. But it was a park, out the square. And wasn't that much traffic.
No.
Now, I made a comparison. I said, well, kind of like the Bowling Green office. They're all in my office, and their office window, you look right across the square. So I could see the local bars, I could see who was going in and out of the bar. I was bored, I could start making up stories. And now the problem is, I'm on the second floor, I got a great view, whatever, and I could see the bar. But there's a building in between, so I can't actually see the people going in. I can see them.
And all day you're going, what is going on over there?
So I'm thinking my first economic development project is to eliminate that building in between. And I'm thinking the insurance agent and the attorney probably are gonna fight me on that. I'm probably not seeing that as economic development growth.
Yeah.
To eliminate all that's not likely to be. Oh, really? Well, good.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
very much.
Bye-bye.
Are we really gonna do this again tomorrow? Twice.
Can we have a copy of your, amazing PowerPoint? I mean, the ones that you have, typed in.